Welcome to East Meets West. And today, yes, so we're in the last month of the year, but today I have another very significant, person who is creating a lot of impact on culture. And yes, so he's going to tell us more about that. And this is like the major topic, I would say, around the world right now in workplace and the workplace culture. So this is what we're going to talk about today. And with me, who's the expert on this topic, is my good friend, Tyler Long, and he's the founder of Legacy Leadership and a founding partner of Legacy Leadership Partners, a global network of over 25 consultants across 6 countries. His mission is simple yet powerful: to help build leaders people want to follow and cultures people never want to leave. So through his work, Tyler equips organizations to develop healthy, high-performing teams that create lasting impact. And so, yes, Tyler, there's much more to Tyler that he's saying here, but I'm going to ask him to even share a little bit more about him. And yes, he's a John Maxwell coach. And, this part of all of the coaches is about impact. That's what we're here today, is to impact your life. So please share this podcast with any of your colleagues that needs to hear this, especially in the workplaces that can benefit from, understanding culture and the importance of what culture is. So Tyler, welcome to East Meets West. And our program is inviting leaders from around the world who impact lives, not only in Guyana, but around the world who are looking at this program. So tell us a little bit more about yourself, Tyler.
Yeah, Shanti, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here. And I am so excited to talk to you about culture today. A little bit more about me. I actually live in Missouri in the United States, which is right smack dab in the middle. I live in Branson with my wife and our 2 little kids. We've got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old, and so they keep us pretty busy and pretty tired. Um, but I remember, I've been in the coaching and consulting space now for a few years, and when I was starting my practice, um, I got really convicted because I went out and I just started going out with I'll do a coaching here, or a training here, or a workshop here, and at the same time, this is just my personal story. At the same time that I was going out on my own and starting my business, we decided that my wife was going to stay at home with our kids as well, and so we were going down to kind of a single income family, and so I thought, my goodness, I really want to build something here that can support our family and also make an incredible impact inside of the marketplace and inside of organizations. And so I went out and I just started having conversations with top tier leaders in the area. And here's what I found: that majority of organizations are are experiencing some sort of culture issue, but there's no real way to measure what that issue really is. We have all of these, I think it's this, or it feels like this, but what we found is there's no real dashboard for it. And so I started to get really convicted about that because, you look at organizations and, companies pay a lot of money for a CFO that looks at the financial health of an organization, which is absolutely 100% needed, right? A chief marketing officer as well. That all of these are to build a strategic pathway forward inside of the organization, but also monitor the health of the organization in that specific area. And if we truly believe what John Maxwell says, which is everything rises and falls on leadership, and then it was Peter Drucker that I believe coined the term that culture eats everything else for breakfast or lunch or whatever meal he decided to land on, then if those two things are true, then why don't we have a dashboard, a mechanism to be able to measure and look at the health and the viability of an organization's culture? And so that's what my business partners and we set out to create, and we are incredibly excited on the impact that it is making. The tool in and of itself is called a culture health scorecard, and it measures the 10 attributes of a healthy culture and gives very granular details to give a great insight inside of an organization's culture.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you are taking this time out, and I do resonate with everything that you said, that culture is it right now.
Yeah.
I think every single organization that I've spoken to their leaders have a culture problem.
Mm.
And it is not a strategy that they lack strategies. They know exactly what they need to do to scale their businesses or their organization, but the culture is one that is killing them.
Yeah.
And even the other day, I was speaking to one company. He says that the teams them are working in silos.
Yeah.
And so, and you come back, what kind of culture are we building? So I'm glad that you're here. And this is something so, impactful that everyone that is listening here, they can, take something away from why this is so important that you need to look at this right now. Look
Yeah.
at what's going on in your company right now. And do reach out to us that, seeing this, your health, you go to the doctor to get a health checkup and you'll get this whole breakdown. This is in range, this is out of range, this is what, and so this is what this report actually do for you. What's the culture, health of your organization? So
Yeah. Well said.
tell us, why is this like, why is culture so important right now in organizations?
Yeah. So the way that we define culture is the way that people think, act, and interact on a team. Another way that people define culture is the DNA of an organization. And so I love the fact that you looked at it just now. You referenced a health aspect. We need to be able to, if those things are true, then that is the heartbeat of an organization. And so if your heartbeat is poor, then everything else in your body is going to be affected. Excuse me. And that's the power and that's the impact of culture. Shocking stats that I think reinforce the need to just dig in. Right now, I read something that actually low engagement inside of a culture is eating roughly $8.9 trillion a year in it throughout the world, just with low engaged employees. That's 9% of the global GDP, just because people hate how they work. And then, shocking, in 2024, global engagement fell to 21%. So just thinking about this, that 4 out of 5 people on payroll are either disengaged or actively checked out. And you think about that, and a lot of times I think culture gets a bad rap. It's feely, it's moody, it's just it's the vibe, right? But culture is so much more than that. And when you think about how that actually directly impacts the bottom line, if I've got 4 out of my 5 employees checked out, what is that doing for our productivity? And how does that translate into dollars that impact the bottom line? It is very much a top line revenue issue.
Yeah. I remember that this scorecard, in fact, the cost of culture that you have prepared, maybe you could talk into this here, what's costing in a sense here too, in dollar value.
Yes, absolutely. I think well, honestly, all of these are pretty shocking numbers. But you look at the first one in $223 billion in lost revenue. So this was a study that was done, and it was lost just purely in the US, lost by US organizations over 5 years due to culture-related turnover. So think about that. A lot of people think that we have a turnover problem. We have a recruiting problem. But really, what if we looked at our retention problem and what's causing the turnover? That's where the health piece really lies. With that, if you look at the next one, it's $550 billion annually with disengaged employees. The next 1 in 5 toxic departures. So employees, there are actually many studies about this. People in toxic workplaces are more than twice as likely to say that even their overall mental health is poor compared to this. And so you see the impact that this has on an employee. I don't want to stay around in a toxic environment, right? Recent studies show that actually 1 in 3 employees have left a job due to toxic cultures. And two in 3 say that it significantly hurt their well-being and their performance. which is wild, right? The next one, you look at 70%. 70% of culture initiatives fail because they lack clarity and they lack accountability measures. Which again, I'll go back to the culture health scorecard. What we do is we want to make sure that our consultants are completely equipped to go in and add the most clarity to make the biggest and best strategic decisions to presentation.
Yes. So, sometimes we hear these numbers, or we hear, man, like, we take it for surface level, but oh boy, to change a culture, there's a lot of work. And what's it gonna cost me? And there's like too much to think about. Let's just continue doing things the way we're doing it. But I'm saying that's what people would say, like, how do I go about changing a culture? Right? How do I go about fixing this here? And then sometimes some people may say, well, it's not only in my organization, it's in the entire country. The culture of the people is like this. But if we were to, advise an organization who speaks like that, what would you tell them when they have all this fear and anxiety? How can I go about it?
Yeah, the first thing is clarity is key. You cannot fix what you cannot define. And if we can't actually put a measurement to it, if we can't actually get really clear with what it is, then we're not going to be able to put a strategy behind it, or at least an effective one. And I think that's what the scorecards offer. The scorecards offer clarity. They offer a measuring tool. They offer a dashboard to be able to see this is where this is coming from. And now because we have this information, now let's go back to the doctor analogy. Now we can effectively prescribe, right? But I think without that knowledge, without that clarity, we're shooting in the dark, and we're not going to have the effectiveness that we could have if we had a tool. I think one of my favorite stories, if it's okay, one of my favorite stories about a cultural turnaround is actually Microsoft. Microsoft in 2014, there was this this massive crisis that they felt that they were in. They were at a $300 billion market value, and it was crashing. And they were scared. And honestly, I mean, think about that. I wish that, if my market value was $300 billion and I was scared, I wish that was a problem that I, I had, right? But so they brought in this CEO named Satya Nadella, and he realized that there was a toxic culture with internal competition. There was silos and office politics that were dominating. They had brilliant engineers, but they were all competing against each other. And really what it was is they had the company that was at risk under market pressure. And so Satya Nadella comes in and he says, you know what? We're going to make one massive cultural shift. And he says that we're going to move from know-it-alls to learn-it-alls. And so he did three things. He began to make it safe to admit mistakes. He made it safe to learn and grow. And he shifted the entire mindset. And what's crazy is in less than a decade, so less than 10 years, their market value grew from over 300 billion to over 1 trillion, which is one of the greatest corporate turnarounds in the history of the marketplace. And if you ask Satya Nadella today what the main contributor of that was, he would say it was culture. It was a cultural transformation. It's not because they added a new revenue line. It's not because they innovated this or that. Was that a piece of the cultural transformation? Absolutely. But the root of that turnaround was moving and shifting the culture.
Yep. And, using that example, I'm thinking on leadership here.
Yeah.
And a leader who came in, see that there is a situation and, the importance of fixing it and doing something about it. So I'm saying this because many times people don't understand that it starts with the leader. What are you doing about it? And then even if, you come up with certain initiative to, okay, this is our cultural transformation journey we'll go through. You need people also on board that will help you to be, the champion cultures,
Yeah.
that they're going to be the one championing the change. And sometimes you do get pushback to with people on board. But and I'm saying this because companies have layers and they have
Hmm.
supervisors and they have managers. And then they have this, let's say the head, the CEO there. He wants all the change. He wants to bring things. He is doing certain things with his senior people. But guess what? Those people, the supervisors, the managers, are not doing back the same with their team.
Yeah.
And so instead of you having this culture shift, you're having this whole, pushback from everyone and getting things to change.
Yeah.
But yeah, how do you advise on something like that?
Excuse me. The way that I would advise against that, I'm going to tell another story here. Excuse me. I apologize. The cold, man. We have snow here, by the way, which anytime the weather changes, it gets me. Um, but one of my favorite stories actually that is right in line with this. There was an organization, they were having a C-suite, like an executive meeting, and their CEO was just kind of fed up with the culture. And so he's in the boardroom and he looks at the rest of the employees, the C-suite, the executive team there, and he says, from now on, everyone carries a broom. And everyone was just kind of looking at each other and they were, what does this mean? And he said, everyone carries. So if you're walking down the hall and you see a piece of trash, everyone carries a broom. And the CFO was actually really upset by this. And he voiced his opinion and he said, listen, I have a degree at Harvard. I have this degree. I have this certification. I have this. I have this. He says, this is what we pay our janitorial team for. And again, doing exactly what you were doing, being combatant against the vision, right? And that CEO took a stance and in that moment said, thank you so much for your time here. You're dismissed. And that sounds really weighty and it sounds crazy, right? But this is where we have to be. One of my favorite people, Shanti, you know him well, John Griffin. One of my favorite people says you have to be maniacally focused about a vision. And you think about that, maniacally. That means so focused, you are a maniac about it. And you think about where that came from, the story of Steve Jobs and Joni Ives. And Steve came to Joni one day and said, Joni, what did you say no to this week? And Joni started listing off some things. And Steve said, no, that's what I pay you to say no for. But he said, I want to know what your sacrificial no was. I want to know what made so much sense on paper, but didn't help us move the needle towards the vision that we had that you said no to it. And I think that's how focused we have to get on culture. If you're living in an unhealthy culture and you want to bring a new level of cultural health, then we have to be maniacally focused. And you will have some people that will get on board with it because they realize what's at stake, but you will have others that will not. What we cannot do is we cannot let the voice of the minority, the naysayers, be louder than the voice of the majority that understand what's at stake in a healthy culture and let that derail the plan. So, will we have to lead and love some people out of the organization? Maybe, maybe. But if we do, then we know that it's for the best.
Tyler, many people think that leadership must be you inspiring and you get along with everybody and it's like this nice kind of thing. But yeah, I, I think many people don't understand that leadership also is part of holding people accountable.
Yes,
And
so true.
some leaders don't want to hold people accountable, and that's why we have the whole cultural problem that happens because everybody bring their own culture.
Yeah,
Instead of we aligning everybody, so this is what our organization culture is and stand firm. What you're saying there, that example is how do I it? Well, you could be the best of whoever.
yeah,
I know in my husband's business too. I could recall I've made it so clear that these are our values. You breach them, you will be fired on them. And one employee actually, there was a situation with him and an ex-female employee, and that was it. I was like, no, that behavior is totally unacceptable. It does not align with our culture. And he was the best salesperson. We top salesperson, in millions was his goals, and his KPIs, and he was hitting those things beyond everybody else. And it was a decision that no, the culture that we want to build here must be of respect.
Yeah.
And, if you're going to not understanding after a warning was given, then you are not aligning to our culture. And those are some hard decisions sometimes, if we want to be liked, I think as leaders, we are the one who's actually contributing to that kind of toxic culture that we're building there, because we're not on our foot.
It's so well said. Cultures are defined by what is tolerated. And you said that so well with accountability. For whatever reason, and I'm going to speak in generalities here for just a second, but as leaders, as business leaders, we think that there's this common misconception that accountability has to be punitive. It's a pointing the finger, it's a demeaning, it's getting mad at them, and it's, you did that. And that's not what accountability is. Accountability, I heard another quote, and I'll go back to John Griffin on this one. I'll credit him on this. Accountability is disciplined encouragement. And think about that for a second. Healthy accountability is disciplined encouragement. And the reason we have accountability is because we have a standard, right? I'm going to hold you accountable to this standard. And if you think about that definition of disciplined encouragement, when you're below, I'm going to encourage you to get to the standard and then overachieve. But what accountability brings is it brings an up or out scenario for that employee. If as leaders we are consistent with our accountability, then it will do one of those two things. It will lead a person up, and it will help them get better and take the challenge and rise to the occasion, or it will lead them out. And they'll realize, you know what, this isn't for me, and I don't know that I'm a good fit here, and that's okay. We're going to love them on the way out the same way that we loved them on the way in, and that's the weight of leadership.
Yes. I think that part of it is like really hard, even with some of my clients that I coach, is that, Shanti, I am a person who likes to help people. And you're telling me here, if this person doesn't align, to let them go. What happened to their family? And, providing for their family, this job is helping them, all of that. And there's so many things that I say to them to help them to understand. But what would you say to somebody like that who says, I'm providing, food through this job for this person, but they're still not aligning?
Yeah. So here's the, I'll say this. The first thing is leadership is not for the faint of heart. It is really tough. And as a leader, you'll have to make decisions that are really tough. And there is no sugarcoating that. There's two words that anyone that I coach, I would love their leadership to be defined by. And the first one is consistency. The second one is accountability. And that first word, consistency, is, they're not sexy words, but if you think about that word consistent, it's a really powerful word, because consistency says that I don't care if you've been on the job for a day or a decade, I'm going to hold you accountable. These are the standards, and I will be consistent. Consistency says that I don't care if we meet regularly outside of the workplace for, Taco Tuesday or whatever, or I just see you inside of the workplace and we're just peers or we just work together there. I will hold you accountable. And if you think about that, if we are consistent with our accountability, I'll go back to that up or out thing. I'm going to hold this person accountable, and it will be up to them whether they take the challenge and rise to the occasion, or eventually, and if you think about it, there's a fork in the road moment, right? there's this intersection where they have to choose, I'm going to take the challenge and rise, or I'm going to realize that this isn't for me. And when we are healthily holding people accountable, that decision is on them. It's not on the leader. We just have to make the decision and have the consistency to hold them accountable to whatever standard that is and whatever metrics we decide to land on for that. And if they are not meeting those, that is a choice of theirs.
Yes. So sometimes I say, um, you know, I think sometimes people just throw their responsibility back on you that, oh, well, you're saying that you're this type of person, you're helpful and you want to help me. But then now you're telling me that if I don't perform, that you're gonna fire me.
Mm,
I'm going to just put it out there. Those are the words will come. You'll fire me because I am not performing. And for me, sometimes I have to help hold up the mirror to the people, and I'm like, it's not my responsibility to look after your family, right? It is your responsibility. And if you are showing up here and you're not doing your part, are you expect to pay you what the commitment was without you doing your part?
mm,
Right? Because maybe, some people are really good with the skill side of the work. They could do the work really well, the skill, but then the behavior doesn't align. And, many of the culture aspect is behavior, right? What are the
yeah.
behavior that is coming out? And those are the things that are being measured. How you're showing up at work along these lines here. And I'm not saying it's a one person thing, it's the entire team here.
Yeah.
But for you to come and say to somebody, well, you know, it is not fair for you to fire me because you're supposed to be a nice person. I do want, people to understand leading yourself. It's leadership starts with yourself.
Yeah.
And if you're not leading yourself consistently in the manner that you're supposed to, you cannot blame somebody else,
Yeah.
to come and show up and do your job for you.
Yeah.
And then you go back and talk so bad about your boss or whoever because they held you accountable to the commitments that you made when you were hired.
Mm,
Right. And so I think sometimes that part of the responsibility, if you don't want people to hold you up to a standard, then you set the standard that you want to be held accountable to. And if your standard is down here and a company standard is here, you are going to have some kind of problem.
yeah. Yeah. I think that we absolutely, with every, with every employee that a leader puts on a performance improvement plan or, in anything like that, we always need to look at ourselves. I think though, it's part of the way that we care about them. One of my favorite just internal questions or reflection questions that I'll ask, anyone that I'm leading is what's it like to be on the other side of the table for my leadership? Another thing I think is what's something that, and this goes back to even the culture, what's something that you've needed from me that you haven't been able to ask or didn't feel like you could ask? Because I want to make sure a leader is there to support. A leader is there to serve. A leader is there to guide the way. And so what I want to make sure is that I am resourcing and serving my team, giving them everything they need to go and be as successful as possible. Now, does that mean that it is my fault when someone is not successful or meeting those standards? Not all the time, right? It's by scenario, by case, right? But always giving the benefit of the doubt and finding out and getting extreme clarity on what it is to make the most informed and strategic decision. That's all part of it. But I think again, I'm going to go back to consistency and accountability here. We have to continue to address because what we don't address, we allow. And if we allow certain behavior for too long, what we don't address, we will actually empower as leaders. And I love the example that you brought up of the high performing sales rep. typically they're the ones that can get by with the most because, well, they're bringing in so much revenue. They're doing this. So we're just not going to, they're fine. But the reality is everyone's watching. Everyone's looking and everyone's seeing. And they're saying, well, if they can get by with that, then what can I get by with? And then that bar begins to lower. And it begins to lower again. And every tolerated behavior that goes against the culture or against the values lowers that bar. And it's not lowering it for just one person. It's lowering it for the entire organization. And it's lowering it for your leadership. And so we have a choice as leaders. We have a choice. Do we want to build a culture by design, or do we just want to drift into one?
Yep. It will be built by default.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm going to bring up this, the culture health score, and maybe you could talk us through what this report is. We've been talking about the report, but how can, this benefit? It's a long report, so I'm just pulling up here, which gives a snapshot of a company health score.
Yeah, so there was a lot of research that we did on the front end of this, trying to figure out what is the makeup of a healthy culture. What are the attributes of a healthy culture? And actually, Shanti, if you go down to the next page there, I think this is one of the most valuable pages. So what this does is this identifies what we call the 10 attributes of a healthy culture, which you can see them listed there. If you're listening and you can't see it, they are in no particular order here: fun and positive environment, celebration and appreciation, continuous learning and development, seen and heard, support and care, living our values, effective communication, empowerment and accountability, and teamwork and collaboration. And what we found is that these are the 10 attributes of a healthy culture. These are the main behaviors that influence the health inside of an organization. And so you'll see the red to green there, the tiered color scale. And as we were creating that, what we were thinking is, we didn't want this report. If you think of a pendulum, we didn't want it to swing too far one way and make it feel oppressive and your culture's terrible and you should just shut your doors now. But we didn't want it to swing too far the other way, though, and give people this false sense of confidence that everything is just roses and rainbows. And so Gallup came out with a study that said that cultures experiencing less than 70% agreement, and you can also interchange that word with alignment, are flagged at risk. And so that became almost like a North Star for us as we were building this. As we dug deeper, what we found there are actually behaviors that are destructive on a team, that are working against your culture rather than working for your culture. And so if you would actually scroll down to the next page, what we see is that every attribute of health has a drill down page like this, where we're able to measure specific behaviors, that's the culture elements there, and look at what the agreement weight of each of those behaviors that make up the overall score. So if I were just taking this one, for example, we can see up there, information is communicated clearly and effectively throughout the organization. Only 73.9% agreed with that, which means that there is a shocking, almost, 26% of the organization does not feel that information is communicated clearly. And if you think of what kind of bottlenecks is that communicating, what kind of roadblocks is that communicating, how important is communication, and what is getting in the way of that? You look at the next one, the next orange one there, team members address conflict directly, professionally, and productively. Only 74.5% of the organization agreed with that. So you think about that, there's 25%, there's a quarter of the organization that's sitting out there that does not believe that we can address conflict productively. Which what that is an indicator of me is that means there's a whole lot of artificial harmony on the team. And so these are some things that we can, some storylines that we can begin to understand inside of a culture to be able, again, to put our best foot forward on a strategy to bring a new level of health to the organization. Every attribute of health has a feedback summary there. There's free-form feedback that's provided. The summary here, you can think, if you've got, a larger organization, even, 100, 200, 300, 500 plus employees, with that free-form feedback, it can get really, really lengthy. And we didn't want to just hand you this massive binder and say best of luck. And so what we wanted to do is provide a summary of the feedback, but then in the back, give you an appendix with all of the full written feedback so you can drill down deeper if desired. But in a nutshell, what this does, Shanti, if you could go back up to that scorecard page. What I love about this page is the visual aspect, where you can see there is a needle on a measuring stick, and we can see exactly where we are on this. What this becomes is this actually becomes a living dashboard. So what we recommend is that all of our clients and all of our consultants' clients will take this every 6 months. And on the second take of this, there will be a secondary indicator. So we will be able to see, did the needle move? And if so, how? And what story is that telling us? And how do we need to pivot our strategy? And what do we need to focus on now? And so what this becomes, earlier we talked about the CFOs and the CMOs and all of the dashboards. Now what we are doing is we are equipping organizations with a cultural dashboard to be able to constantly keep a pulse on the health of their organization and make the best strategic decisions to bring a constant.
Wonderful. Yes, it's a 26-page report that breaks every one of those areas out. And I know I'm scrolling very fast. It gives summary and, even the written comment by everyone is still also included. But it is a really impactful report that gets you. And then even, as you develop strategies to work on these areas, you can do back and you have a report that will show you where you start and where even, so it is something we have introduced to here at Lead to Influence, that people can contact, organization can contact us, and we will have this report conducted for your company or your team, and you get a report to show you exactly was the health of your organization, and we get to also work with you. So tell us about that, Tyler. Now that we have our culture health is 72% areas, what else do we do after now knowing this?
Yes. Well, so that's one of the incredible things. And Shanti, I'm gonna pick on you here on this, because you are one of our consultants.
Yes.
And so anyone listening, first off, if you want access to this, make sure that you reach out to Shanti. Because the other thing that she is a rock star in is taking that data and being into a framework that brings about a consistent level of intentionality and effort to be able to impact the culture. So an example on this, if we see that effective communication is low, well, what an incredible opportunity to get the team together and do some very intentional trainings on how do we up-level our communication. Same thing with trust and respect. And I'm a massive fan of Patrick Lencioni's. And so I love the 5 dysfunctions or the 5 behaviors of a team. What a great opportunity to go in and teach things like that. And so, what the entire network, so all of the consultants, Shanti, myself, our team, what we focus on is not just being able to have a tool that gives us the insights, but also how do we turn those insights into action? Because it's the action that's going to make the difference on the team, not just the knowing. It's the closing the gap between the knowing and the doing, and so that's what we primarily focus on.
Wonderful. Yes, you have access to all of this right here, and you can actually reach out to myself and send us a message, or call our organization, and we're gonna get you set up where you can actually run this whole cultural assessment with your team and see where they are. And it's a good start, for a new year coming in, where are we at right now and how do we work on this in this coming year. This could be your, your goal to, I want to shift our team right now. I don't know where we're at, but now I'm gonna know through this assessment, and then I want to shift them to where I can tell you, you can't shift them if you're in a red right now all the way to a green, and even maybe in a year. Right? So it's not possible, and I think this is where many organizations think everything is just it's a quick fix. Oh, come do this training, and oh, communication will just automatically improve. And I'm saying to you, and Tyler can also say, one time training on something doesn't fix anything.
Right.
You have to build on a program that will help, you know, reinstate some of these things that they're learning. Who is going to be holding, the team accountable for things that is going to be put in place. There's a lot to go into it, and let's just do a band-aid. I'm gonna fix this by giving them some training. What are your thoughts, Tyler? How even in the US, what are some of the things you see in the organization with that?
Yeah, I'm going to get up on a soapbox really quick on this one. I'm very passionate about this one. Trainings are great, but they are just trainings. What is more important than a training is what happens after the training. We are in an age where there is just content overload right now. I mean, you can go Google keynotes from some of the best, John Maxwell, Pat Lencioni, Craig Rochelle, all of the greats, right? And you can get wonderful. Where we focus and where we've noticed the biggest gap is not content, but it's how does that content apply to an organization's context? And if we are not, as consultants, if we are not connecting those dots, then the training is going to be null and void. It'll fade in a matter of days, weeks, maybe a month if you're lucky. But so a strategy that we use is absolutely, we include trainings in the mix of things, but I'm going to bring back that word accountability. We bring back focused accountability on steps, actionable steps in between the trainings that bring about an intentional level of growth.
And sometimes I think people need to hear it from others. So
yeah.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
don't fool yourself to think that, some one-time training can fix anything. It will inspire your team. I've seen this. It inspires them and they come all hype and ready next day to do something, and the environment kicks in back. And within a week, 2 weeks, you're back to square one.
Yes.
I do want to, stress on this part here is that the leaders must decide the direction of your organization and choose, this is where I want my people to go, and I'm willing to do what is necessary to take them there, because they were not going to go there by themselves.
Right.
So Tyler, as we come to a close, I know we went beyond our time here. I do appreciate you in your busy schedule, giving
my
us
pleasure.
all these insights, and it's such a topic that is so needed, and you have a solution. In fact, we have a tool that organization can use now to measure where they're at on each one of these areas, which are the key areas to get your team functioning. And then we also work on developing, how do you go about, I don't want to say change a culture. I was studying on culture, and you can't change it. You could introduce a new culture. Which culture you want to introduce, and how do you reinforce that culture? It's something that we can work with you. So Tyler, any closing remarks from your end?
Yeah, just one final thing, and thank you for asking. And again, Shanti, thank you so much for having me today. Absolute honor and pleasure to be with you, and so much fun. Always so much fun. I think the one thing that organizations will get maybe frustrated that I'm putting in all of this effort and intentionality towards changing the culture, and I'm just not feeling it, or it's not getting there as fast as I want it to, and everyone might think that it's someone else's responsibility to change the culture, and there can be a lot of finger pointing. And here's what, if you want to take this challenge and you want to bring a new level of health to your organization and to the culture of your organization, What you need is you need a team of people that are committed to being the change that they desire to see. That is what will bring the most effective level of transformation, is when they look inward and they say, this is what I can do. This is my commitment to bringing about a new level of health in these areas. And if everyone makes an internal commitment to do it, that's how we get there. It's not finger pointing and saying that person needs to change and you need to change and you need to do this. No, it's what can I do? And so if you're thinking about doing this, just begin to plant the seeds of what is our part? What is my part? Encourage your team to think, what is their part on this? And that's how you begin to change the trajectory.
I love that. Self-leadership. I was just back there. How well are you leading? So if you're not going to work on you, and I have this kind of philosophy is that if I work on me and I get better, you work on you, you get better, and you work on you, you get better. As a team, the organization will get better.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I appreciate you and everything that you shared here. And guys out there, culture eats strategy for breakfast. All your strategies you could have for your company, and you want to know why we're not getting there, why it's the culture that you're in. So how do you change the culture? Contact us, send us any question in the comment section, anything you would like to ask Tyler, he would gladly answer you or myself, and how you can introduce this, this health check for your organization, the cultural health check. Just reach out to me if you want the time that we could talk about it some more, and how we can give you an assessment for this and your report, and how do you want to take it from there. We're here to support, and this is one of my passion too, is about engagement and helping organization to grow. So Tyler and myself, we're pretty much aligned with that belief system of helping others. Share this video with anyone that needs to hear about this, and the whole aspect about culture. And again, leave your comments. Tyler, again, thank you so much for your time today, and
thank you.
Enjoy your day.
Thanks so much.